Talent mistakes that can cost CIOs millions of dollars. That's what we're going to talk about here in today's live discussion. Joining me is a guest I'll introduce in just a moment. But before I dive into the topic and introduce our guest, wanted to thank you, the audience, for being here today. We're streaming live to LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, X, and TikTok. So thanks for joining wherever you are here today. We're going to be taking your questions too. So we're doing this live, part of our live podcast production. So any questions or comments you have, we'd love to hear from you. So we're keeping an eye on the chat across all the streams. So fire away at us. Give us questions, comments, things you want to talk about as it relates to talent and building teams within either a digital transformation or a broader just IT capability that you might be trying to build. We're going to cover everything from building the internal teams to support your projects to finding the right outside talent to everything in between. So we'll get into that here in just a moment. Before we do, I'd love to hear from you all, the audience. Where are you joining from today? What city and country are you joining us from today? We usually get a global audience, so it's always fun to see where everyone is. I'm in Denver, Colorado today. My guest is in Los Angeles, California. So we're both in the U.S., but love to hear what city and country you're joining from today. So if you don't mind just dropping that in the chat, love to hear from you on that. In fact, put it up on the screen just to make it official. That's an official question for the audience. It's a mandate to the audience to tell us where you're joining from today. So we're going to talk today about talent mistakes that can cost CIOs millions. Joining me to have that conversation is Jonathan Whipple, who's the CEO of a company called Lander Talent. So Jonathan, thanks for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here again. And before we jump into the talent discussion, tell us a little bit about Lander. It's a company you and I have started together, but you're the main brain behind it. So tell us a little bit about what Lander does and how it fits into the overall marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, we find the best IT and ERP talent in the market and fill roles. We are very, very, very focused on impact and helping organizations really right the ship, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your background. You have such an interesting background. That's the non-traditional route to end up where you are here today. I don't know anyone who's ever said, hey, I want to be an ERP recruitment expert as a kid. And I don't know if that was your case, but it sounds like you had maybe a detour in life that sort of led you here. Tell us a little bit about that detour and how you ended up in this space.
You know, I'd like to say that growing up, I was just like sitting on my bed dreaming of digital transformation and helping, helping folks with implementations. But you're right. There was a big detour. So the first part of my career was producing television and in reality TV specifically. So I worked in casting and it was finding the right person for the right role. So you can see the overlap. The difference there is, I was looking for people who wanted to win $1 million or get married at first sight or, transfer their career from, say Grammy award-winning artists to television hosts. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, but I mean, I was ready for a new challenge. And I guess you could just say I like finding the right person for the right role. I want them to avoid the wrong role.
Right. Yeah, I imagine coming from that TV background too, it's so there's so much, I imagine, psychology and chemistry and things you've got to look for that are not, you're not looking at people on paper. You're looking at what's going to drive ratings or what's going to make for an interesting story or an interesting show. So I imagine that those nuances of finding that kind of talent, I imagine that would help you quite a bit here in this space, in the IT space.
I think it's my unfair advantage. Not everybody has that experience of interviewing thousands of people and putting 10,000, 100,000 hours into interviewing day in and day out. But you really start to, your pattern recognition becomes very strong. And it's like I said, it's an unfair advantage. And I love helping companies with it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only person in this industry that did not dream of being an ERP consultant or a digital transformation expert. That was not what I was dreaming of as a kid.
Oh my gosh. I'm shocked. I thought you would have had it like in your journal, man. Like,
yeah, just my vision board when I was 5 years old was
yeah.
Be a digital transformation consultant. So of all those shows you worked on, do you have like a favorite show that you had the most fun working on or you had the most staffing for? Because you've worked on some really interesting reality shows.
I mean, my my favorite, because so like going back to being a child, Lego is such a core part of who I am. I mean, you might like there's even like I think over my shoulder here you see like a little Lego Boba Fett. I did a show called Lego Masters, which is a competition show about building Lego. My son loves Lego, my wife loves Lego, so like being able to tap into something that's such a part of who I am and who I was as a kid. I did Lego Masters was really a standout for me personally.
So you kind of did live your childhood dream, doing the Lego show. Just ended
a
up
little bit.
It led you to something even cooler, which is digital transformation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I want to say hello to some of the people joining us from in the audience here today. Someone on LinkedIn, and I apologize, I don't see the name, but someone joining from Copenhagen in Denmark. So thanks for being here. Someone on YouTube joining from Dallas. George is on LinkedIn joining from Nairobi, Kenya. Sandra is joining on YouTube from Chicago. Thanks for being here today. And then Carmen is joining us here today. I think she's in Chicago, or I know her. She lives in Chicago. I don't know if she's there right now, but Carmen says, I loved Lego Masters. So you're not alone here. You've got some fellow Lego Masters fans here. Carmen also says people strategy is very important. Understanding people and having EQ is key. And I guess, that's a good segue into a first question here. When we think about hiring people for an IT, whether it's an IT project or you're trying to hire someone for your IT staff, like an architect or a business analyst, whatever it is, it's easy to really get not bogged down, but myopically focused on what's on the resume, what's on paper. Do they have the right skills? Do they have the qualifications? Do they know the right programming language? Whatever. What are some of the EQ types of nuances you look for in terms of emotional intelligence or just overall EQ? What are some of the things you look for when you're trying to find the right person for the right job?
Great question. And I totally agree on the EQ front, Carmen. When I'm looking and trying to identify EQ and anything in the soft skill arena, it starts with that initial call, maybe even an initial message. How does that conversation flow on the screen, or on your phone, if you're texting, email, whatever it may be, but it gets to that first conversation. Are you connecting, and how are you connecting? Is it a thoughtful conversation, or is it somebody that's just attempting to get as much information to you as possible? Because if we're having a conversation, or you're having a conversation with a hiring manager, whoever it may be, you're having that conversation for a reason. They're probably aware of what your experience is. So a big portion of this is connection and chatting with somebody. Like you're chatting with them over coffee, but like a really serious coffee,
Right.
I think it comes down to connection.
Yeah. And it's hard to put your finger on that, and you're not going to see it on a resume.
Yeah, because it's so much about feeling, and it's going to depend on the other person on the other end of the line. Like you're not going to connect with everybody. I mean, maybe you are. If you connect with everybody and you have all the digital transformation skills in the world, please send me your resume.
Right.
please. Like you're in the highest possible demand, but connection, and yeah, I think connection is the core of it.
Yeah. So that's one common mistake that organizations can make is, maybe not focusing enough on EQ and maybe the cultural fit of the person, not, setting aside the skills and the sort of the minimum qualifications. It's that extra piece of it that I would imagine is a big mistake a lot of teams make, or a lot of CIOs make when they're trying to build up their teams. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see CIOs make when it comes to building out their teams internally and or externally?
Yeah, I think that the biggest one, like it maybe not shocking, but it's one wrong senior hire. Like if you miss at the top of the org chart, that's the biggest possible miss, because senior hires, they don't miss quietly, like they don't fail alone. You've got somebody whose decisions are going to ripple across teams, across vendors, across timelines. This one person that is a senior hire, I mean, their problems multiply across dozens of people, right? It's not a bad hire. It's a bad multiplier, and that's a problem.
Right. Yeah. That makes total sense. Want to just get back to some of the audience questions here. Got someone on LinkedIn joining from Florida. Thanks for being here today. And Carmen is indeed from freezing Chicago. So thank you for joining. I suppose you have nothing better to do than to listen to us talk. If it's that cold out, maybe you just don't want to go outside. Darren's joining us on LinkedIn, says good morning. Thank you for that. And then Carmen has a follow-up here. Connection and authenticity. People buy from people. So it's a great point. That connection that you're talking about, Jonathan, I think that's something that's easy to overlook, especially as we get so focused on like, do they have the right? Do they know AI? Do they know the newest version of 𝗧𝗵𝗁? Do they know public cloud? It's like you get so honed in on these technical skills that it can be really easy to overlook that cultural fit. And I'm sure you've seen this too, but I've seen some really smart, very talented people that are just terrible fits because it's not because they don't have the right hard skills. It's because those soft skills, they don't have the temperament to be a good collaborator or a good listener, or someone that can empathize with change or whatever. I mean, is that something you've seen as well?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to be a part of a team. I mean, unless you're working in a complete silo, you're working entirely detached from everybody else, and your outcomes have nothing to do with other people. Like it's very important to connect. Like if it's not there, like there's a major problem. There's a major problem.
Yeah. And it's not just, the person connecting with the organization, but it's also like, you want different types of people that can bring diverse personalities and opinions, but you also want them to be cohesive and part of one team. How do you find that balance, between like, I don't want us all to look the same on this team that I'm building, this project team or this IT team, but I don't want them to be so different that they can't collaborate together. So how do you navigate that when you're trying to help someone put together the right team?
It's tricky, you've got to thread the needle, and there's so much priority placed on culture fit today, and I think rightfully so. But I think something that gets overlooked is culture add, and I know that's a lot of what you're talking about in terms of diversity and different viewpoints. Culture add is so incredibly important. Being able to, I think when you're looking at things as additive, it's like that game you play in the living room when you're a kid, where you're like knocking a balloon and keeping it up into the air. There's like flair that each person brings. Like as a kid, you're trying to keep this up in the air. What you want to do is have people who can, knock that balloon around, keep that idea in the air, and do something new with it, innovate and bring it forward. The fit is something that you should see. Like if you're looking for somebody, how they're going to fit in the team, but they should add to it. Your culture, ideally with a perfect hire, with an A+ hire, is improving in a way that you don't see yet. Like that is the ultimate unspoken goal. That's what I hope happens.
Right. Yeah. Well, very well said. Harwinder on LinkedIn says, good to see you, Jonathan, and Eric together. So thank you for that, Harwinder. I think he does a pretty awesome combo myself, but I'm biased,
I'm a big fan of Harwinder, and I totally agree. I think we're a great combo, and Harwinder, I love you, man.
That's awesome. Here's a really good question from VJ on LinkedIn. VJ says, how do you strike the right balance between building in-house expertise and bringing in outsourced talent? Which approach do you think pays off better in the long run? I love this question because it's something that a lot of our clients struggle with. A lot of the clients you've worked with, I know over the years, have struggled with this. How do you find that right balance? What's the right answer? Is there a right answer?
Oh man, it's funny because VJ, this is honestly so much of what Eric and I talk about every day because it is a fine balance. I think it's incredibly important to have the right in-house talent. You have to have somebody that can check whoever it is that you're working with. Like the external talent is incredibly important, and it's always outcome driven, trying to reach a deadline and trying to hit a goal. And that's important. That's, if you're in the middle of a digital implementation, that's everything. But who owns it? Who is making sure that this is getting done? And more importantly, who is making sure that this is going to have the impact that is required, that you're hoping for once everything goes live, once everything is done, once every goal is met and every milestone is achieved. You need somebody on the other side. So many companies and so many teams wait until the end, or wait until like, oh, I didn't even know I needed this. So I am very happy that you're asking that, VJ, because it's sorely missed.
Yeah, it's a real thing, and it's easy to err too far on one side or the other. You know, we've had some clients who will say, "Hey, we're just going to outsource this entire thing to outside contractors or a consulting firm." We've had other clients that say, "We're going to do it all ourselves. We'll just hire the people and manage them ourselves." I think the reality is you need somewhat of a balance. I mean, you want to build. You don't want to be over dependent on consultants or software vendors for sure, but you also don't want to miss out on the outside expertise that can help make the project more successful. So I think that's and plus, if you have some internal staff to help manage the project, you're just more likely to keep it on track and have a team there that's representing you and looking out for your business interests, not just trying to push technology or push a technological agenda from the outside. So
absolutely.
Here's a couple other comments here. Carmen clarifies that she's not slacking off. She's actually working. Loves turning into our crew. Have a great day. Very Merry Christmas. So thank you for that, Carmen. Merry Christmas to you as well.
Merry Christmas.
And there's a couple really good questions here in the audience I have to get to. These are good ones. So this is from Sanjay on LinkedIn. Sanjay says, how do we foster a culture of continuous learning and innovation within our IT team to avoid employee stagnation and burnout? So once you've got the team, how do you keep them motivated, keep them learning, innovative, keep them from getting stale or maybe too focused on internal stuff? What have you seen work there?
That's a great question. And it's going to be specific to each individual team. But for me, I'm a bit of a nerd. So I love learning and I love nerding out with other people. So one way that I love to do this is it's kind of the same way when you're sharing the television show you're binging, right? Like I've been watching Stranger Things. Here's this thing I love about it. Have you seen this show before? Like you have to get just as excited about learning as you are about the things that fill water cooler talk. So if your water cooler talk can transform into this exciting thing that you're learning, that is the dream scenario. And I think that it's happened quite a bit in the last few years, very specifically around AI, because everybody is dabbling with it at this point, right? Or everybody is like an expert, but like if you look back 18 months or 2 years ago when people were first like, oh, ChatGPT dropped. This is available, to me as a consumer. Like, here's what I'm using it for. Think about that. Think about that piece of using AI for the first time. Think about the first time you used something like social media. What's the first time you used Twitter or Facebook? And oh, wait, I can do this and I can update this. Nerd out about the thing and make it exciting. What you want is that exchange of ideas and information and, oh, wow, I learned this. You learned that. Well, I actually dove into this YouTube channel last night and started to figure it out.
Yeah. You're kind of alluding to a passion, and it sort of gets back to the cultural thing you're talking about too, or the EQ. When you're building a team, you're speaking at it from the perspective of, if you're a candidate or if you're a team member, stay excited, share the excitement, make it contagious, all that good stuff. But same with I imagine when you're recruiting people, if you can find someone who has that thirst for knowledge and is constantly trying to get better and understands that they don't have all the answers, I think that's really important too. Like someone that understands that I can always be better. I can always be learning something new. I don't have all the answers because things are changing so fast. I think all that stuff's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very cool. And then here's a juicy question from Sandra on YouTube. And she says, do you believe that the use of applicant tracking systems and selecting candidate pools has contributed to hiring mistakes? Especially, I might add to that too, the layer of AI, because I think it was Workday. I can't remember if it was Workday or if it was Oracle Talent. One of the big HCM solution providers in the market, I think, got sued, or they acknowledged that there was bias in their AI, screening process or whatever. What are your thoughts here on applicant tracking systems? Does that create any sort of biases or hiring mistakes? Have you seen that be a problem in the past?
It's interesting because yes, I have not firsthand, but it's one of those like one of those war story things that are shared from between recruiters. At least not in the way that I use an ATS myself, because it's more a person moving along the actual process. Like, here's where they are, they've applied, like, okay, now they're in the first interview. I'm using it more from a visual standpoint, but there, as you mentioned, there have been lawsuits. There are biases built in, and unbeknownst, right? Nobody's building a tool and trying to make it have a bias in the first place. But certainly, yes, Sandra.
Especially when you combine that fact with what you were talking about earlier about, needing to focus on more than just the hard skills that show up in an applicant tracking system, the culture and the connection, all the stuff you were talking about, the quest for learning, that doesn't necessarily show up in an ATS. So you've got to look beyond, ATS can be one tool, but you don't want to be overly dependent on that to determine, who the best candidates are, I would imagine.
Absolutely. I agree there. And I think that there is now quite a bit of light at the end of the tunnel in terms of that. So if you think about like early iterations of AI kind of predating all of us using it day to day, it certainly has been built into, ATS systems for a while. And that it was young, rudimentary technology that's really looking at how long has this person, like looking at dates and looking at titles. So now, thankfully, there's a lot more nuance to AI inside of ATS that it's able to find things better. But yeah, I think we've got a ways to go as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a comment from Scott on LinkedIn. Scott says, I believe leaders find out what makes each person tick. They tailor the rewards at the individual level. When you think back to your favorite boss, I bet it's because you felt understood by them and valuable to them. The team is a wrapper that groups individuals. It's a really interesting point, Scott. So thank you for that.
I totally agree. I totally agree. If you've got a leader that is tailoring incentives and rewards to you as a person, that is the dream. That is the ideal. Like, I think I said this morning on LinkedIn, but like the major perk of your job isn't the compensation. It's like the best possible perk is feeling great at 10 a.m. on Monday morning. Like that's where you want to be.
Like, I'm enjoying this. I'm having fun doing this.
Yeah.
I like being here. I'm not thinking about how I'm sad because the weekend's over. I'm actually enjoying this.
Yeah, I'm here and I'm excited. Like, that's what you want to do. And if that's what you're bringing, who are you hiring? Yeah. I got a bunch of people for you, Scott.
Yeah, exactly. got just the team for you, Scott.
Come on, Scott.
And I know a guy, Scott, that can help you continue building that team. He's on the screen here with me. Here's a longtime listener, 𝗖𝗢𝗢, and I apologize, 𝗖𝗢𝗢𝗢. After all these years of you listening and watching, I should probably know how to pronounce your name. So I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. But thank you for joining again today. He's got a long comment here that doesn't all show up on the screen, but I'll read it here. 𝗖𝗢𝗢𝗢 on LinkedIn says, balance is the key. You need an internal team that owns the outcome and stays focused on real business success. But you also need outside talent that truly knows the vendor software and can challenge it in your favor, like a devil's advocate on your side. That's why working with a smaller firm can be a smart move. They are often closer to the work, more hands-on, and more willing to speak up when something doesn't make sense. So I think that's very, very well said. The balance, I think, is really important. I think that's back to what you and I were talking about, Jonathan. Just, you want to build that internal team. You also want to leverage outside people, but you don't want to go too far to one extreme or the other.
Absolutely. I think you want the advocate in both directions. I like the way that 𝗖𝗢𝗢𝗢𝗢 said that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting question from Darian on LinkedIn. Darian says, how do you actually assess connection in a hiring process without relying on gut instinct alone? So, and maybe another way to put this would be, how do you develop that muscle? Like if I'm not used to looking for that and maybe I don't have a strong gut instinct one way or the other, what am I looking for when I'm trying to assess someone's connection, cultural fit, fit with my overall team, all that stuff?
It's a tricky one because it's an intangible, like it's so hard to really sum it up, but it's important to find a place for that to fit on the scorecard. So I think it's measured in silence. Silence, I think, is probably the biggest indicator. It's the biggest thing that you can measure and see. So if things stop flowing, some silence is good. You want to be able to have pauses and have breaks and have that. But I think silence is probably the biggest way to assess in terms of something that you can look for. But that's on the I guess it's adverse, it's negative, right? So I think that's the easiest way, and a lot of it is measuring with your gut.
So when you say silence, then it's almost like if you're interviewing a candidate, talking to a candidate for the first time, and it's just flowing, there's an energy and a spark between you and the candidate. It's like you said, flowing. That's a good indicator. But if it's not, it just stops, then that might tell you there's not that connection. There's not that whatever, that interest on either or both sides, and getting to know one another, whatever the case may be. Not because you're bad people, but maybe it's just not the right personality fit or whatever.
You got it. You got it. If it's not there, it's not there. And silence is the indicator. Yeah.
What about the opposite though? Have you ever had a situation where this person is just perfect cultural fit? I mean, I'm connecting with them. There's a good energy. I think this is going to be a good vibe or fit with whoever I'm staffing or placing this person to. But then they get in there, great cultural fit, people like them, but then they don't have the hard skills, or they don't maybe have the technical chops that you thought. So in other words, is it easy or is it common to get blinded by strong cultural fit, that you get blinded to the fact that they don't have the technical competencies or the hard skills? So sort of the opposite of what we were talking about.
So yes, I have seen that happen. And it's a double-edged sword, right? I think the way that I look at things is always, if the connection is there, the skills can be built. I mean, unless, I'm hiring a doctor, and then like that requires so much time to get to that point. But I've built out teams myself where the people underneath me did not have the skills on day one. The soft skills were there in spades. Everything you could have ever hoped for. And then it really comes down to development. So I think that is incredibly important. And that kind of comes back to, I guess we haven't chatted on this, but onboarding has to be right. Here are the outcomes. Here is what we were looking for. Here are, the goals for 30, 60, 90 days. Here's where I hope you are a year from now. That all has to be very, very, very clear. Especially when you're hiring solely on a vibe check. If it is that vibe and that connection, and that is somebody that's going to be additive to your culture, that's way harder to find than somebody that has the actual skill. But you need a great leader up top who can then actually build that team and make sure that those skills come to fruition and develop over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know for me, that's in this overall question about, cultural fit, and, what if you have the cultural fit, but not the tangible hard skills fit? That's the hardest thing for me as a leader to navigate, honestly. Cause it's like, if I know someone's a good cultural fit, but they don't quite hack it in terms of the technical hard skills, that's really hard for me. Like, I'd struggle with that as a leader, because I will err on the side of cultural fit to a fault sometimes. And we actually had one person that was, with our company, a guy I love. Like, he's a great guy and really good cultural fit. He's with us for a few years, but as we grew, it just got to the point where like it just wasn't a good fit, like for the skill, the hard skills. And that I really struggled with that. I probably waited too long, to move forward with what needed to happen there. But that it's a hard one. So I struggle. So this is interesting for me because I do struggle with that quite a bit. I think I learned a long time ago, though, not to focus solely on hard skills, which is good. But there are times now where I almost like I overcorrect and go too far the other way. So good stuff. So I want to say hello to Passer on YouTube, joiner from Poland. So thanks for being here today. I don't know why I've noticed recently a lot of people from Poland are starting to follow me. So apparently I'm huge. You and I think are becoming huge in Poland, from what I understand.
Poland, we're on our way. We're coming. Yeah. We're coming to a town near you.
Yeah, Warsaw. We'll have an office here soon.
Oh yeah.
Sure. Here's another really good question from Darian on LinkedIn. Darian says, "What capabilities must never be outsourced, regardless of budget or timelines?" So are there certain like deal breakers or showstoppers where you say you need to have this person in-house, or maybe the opposite too, this person you don't want to bring in-house, you want to bring in an outside expert to help you in this area?
That's such a great question. And I think it's always going to come down to what the organization needs themselves and what they prioritize. But I think ownership over specific lanes should always be in-house. You need somebody who owns the finished product, or the post-finished product, somebody that's going to fit into their lane, and that's something that they're running with. So whoever owns it at the end, that is not something that should be outsourced. The person who sees, and we were just talking about this the other day, but sees this become boring, that's what you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so we've talked about a lot of different mistakes that could cost CIOs millions. And one we haven't gotten to yet that you and I have talked about before is, and we haven't talked about it yet today though, and that is that rushed fill. That, I've got a project, for whatever reason, I'm in a rush to start it. Maybe my vendor's pressuring me because they're going to bring in all the consultants next week, and I've got to get my team mobilized and ready. Tell us about rust hires. Like, do you see that often? What are some of the pitfalls there? What are some of the consequences of that? Tell us about this, because you want to act with a sense of urgency on one hand, but on the other hand, getting a wrong hire internally or externally can be very costly. So what's some advice you have there?
Urgency is usually how bad hires sneak in. On the staffing side, I like to fill things as quickly as possible, right? I like to move fast, and that is important. But there's a difference when you get to the point where the pain of the business problem gets louder than judgment. That's how the bad hires start to sneak in. So in those sort of situations, depending on how fast you go, usually, I guess, on one hand, you're moving very fast, but it's going to slow the organization. So yeah, I think it's a lot of deferred pain. So you want this short-term relief, but ultimately you're going to pay twice to fix it. So you still need to maintain structure in your process and really, make sure that you're hiring the right person.
Right. Yeah. What about at the senior level? When you're looking at senior hires, what are some of the mistakes or pitfalls of that, of potentially getting that kind of a hire wrong? Like let's call it a project manager, or maybe it's if you're a CIO and you're hiring a director of enterprise applications, or, some senior person within your IT organization. Tell us about maybe a lesson or lessons from making bad senior hires.
Well, bad senior hires usually trigger other bad hires, so you've got, it kind of goes back to what we were chatting on earlier of it's a multiplier. You hire the wrong person, they make the wrong decisions, suddenly timelines get pushed out. Suddenly they've hired the wrong person. It's kind of like when you have this big, if you look behind my desk right now, all the wires are tangled up. Like once you finally determine, oh shoot, this is the thing I have to fix, right? Like I've got my monitors out, I've got to change this, or in this case, the bad senior leader, you have to untangle the rest of the mess, and now you've got 6 months added on to your implementation time. You've got 2 other people leading different things that you need to remove. You've got different processes in place that actually are not impacting what you need them to impact. It's untangling all of this mess that was created from one single leader, and you got to get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you talked about triggering other bad hires, which is actually a really good point. I hadn't really thought of it that way before, but it's a great point that you
Yeah.
bring in that senior person. If that's a bad hire, whether it's a cultural bad fit or just whatever it is, now that's going to spread and propagate in the form of other candidates that person ends up hiring that maybe is also a bad fit. But also think about the decisions that senior leadership on an IT team make. Something as significant as we are going to rip out our ERP system and put in SAP, or we're going to put in Microsoft. They just make these decisions that, on the surface may not sound like a bad thing, but they might be making these decisions based on their own biases. And,
Yeah.
if they're not a good fit and they're not going to be around for the long haul, you're going to inherit these decisions that they make, and that may not be what the rest of the team wants or what's right for the business. So that's the other thing too, is it's like major technological decisions end up getting made that are going to affect your company for years to come, and that alone could cost you millions, if you go down the wrong path or the wrong technology or a flawed digital strategy or whatever the case may be.
100%.
Yeah, that's the worst when you see that. I mean, I always, those are hard to undo too, because a lot of times once those decisions get baked, you can't just unwind it all. Even, just because that senior person didn't work out and they left, you're still stuck with, you've inherited these decisions that were made, by the predecessor.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about, we haven't talked yet about role definitions.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're hiring, tell us about maybe some common mistakes or challenges with having clarity around what it is you're hiring for. Like, it's not enough to say, I need to hire an architect. Well, what do you need? What do you want from that role? Tell us about, what some of the common pitfalls are here.
When success isn't clear, failure gets so expensive. So it has to be clear what somebody does in their role. A lot of times roles, they tend to, you're trying to put yourself out in the market and share an exciting role, an exciting opportunity, right? Like, a job description doubles as duties and marketing for what your company is. So you want to attract the right person, but a lot of priority is placed on that. So it has to be clear what the person is going to do, because misalignment causes so much rework, and then rework spreads, just like a bad senior leader, like we were just talking about, and then time disappears. So you have to start up front and be as clear as possible, because the fuzzier it gets, the more expensive it gets.
Yeah. Now, how about from a candidate's perspective? If I'm a candidate and I'm trying to navigate my career and look at next project moves or staffing moves I might want to make, what would you say? Like, what advice would you have as far as what some of the hottest areas are in IT right now? Like, areas that you think are going to be, especially fruitful for candidates and good career opportunities? Are there certain software vendor types of implementations or types of technologies or types of roles that you think are going to be really hot in the next 3 or 5 years we may not be thinking about already?
Yeah, I think things that are in the low code, no code space, being an individual that maybe is not traditionally a builder in that sense, having that ability to build low code and no code, I think is something that is going to become more and more important. Being able to create your own, mini solution on the fly. I think things in the AI space, specifically on ethics and governance and how that AI works, is something that's is going to be very interesting. But I think overall, anything AI, it's so obviously everybody's saying it, and you've been joking about it in videos lately about how passionate you are about AI, right? But it's how does AI plug into things, and how does it work, and how can you move faster? And I think also thinking very non-traditionally. I think I'm trying to think of who coined this, and I think it's Rona Barnett Pierce. It's a term called workfluencer, but it's people who create content. So not necessarily a role, but if you're able to advocate for your company because you have an audience, that is not a traditional role, but that is a place that people are finding space for inside of their organizations. So it's not a clear role, but it is a cheat code, as the kids say. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Workfluencer. I had not heard that. I was not familiar
Oh,
with
I
it.
love it. It's
Yeah.
such a good term. Yeah.
Really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think AI affects our jobs going forward? I know that's a really big charged question, but you know, you hear all these, especially in the consulting space right now, just given that's what I'm most familiar with is consulting. You know, there's, for example, I saw Emma Roloff is a digital transformation influencer, a fellow influencer on LinkedIn and TikTok, and she posted a video yesterday about how like McKinsey is saying that they're planning thousands of layoffs as a result of AI. You know, so how do you see AI affecting the job market? Because you hear everything from AI is going to replace millions of jobs to, oh, it's not going to replace any jobs. It's just going to make us all better at our jobs. And the answer might be somewhere in between. But what do you think is going to happen with AI? How is it going to affect what you and I do and what others listening here today, our careers in general? Spend the whole hour on that one question. But.
Yeah. Well, what I hope it does is everybody works less and makes more. Like that's what I hope is the outcome. But I think it's kind of this progressive ladder of, you know, we start by using AI and it helps us with our work. And then we move to a point to we're helping AI and then AI takes over. I think is kind of the progression. It's just a matter of how long is that going to take. So I think for the interim, and that interim could be 5 years, 10 years, 100 years, right? Like however long we have in traditional jobs, I think we should use AI to make ourselves faster and have more time to do the things that we want to do. And that might be other projects at work, or that might be other projects at home, like you name it, like, right? Just find your lane. But I think AI is it's all encompassing. So I don't see it taking away, you know, every job, but like as you cited with like Emma's post about McKinsey, you know, you can put together a prompt right now that is like, okay, here's the deck I would have gotten from McKinsey anyway, and
Right.
And it didn't take, you know, tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. It took me, you know, it took me a few minutes. So,
yeah. I mean, there's also the story in, I think it was in Australia involving Deloitte, where the Australian government, you know, caught Deloitte using AI and not validating the information from AI to create it was like a $400,000 report that I think it was Deloitte. It was one of the big consulting firms that they had created. And so they're going back to Deloitte saying, hey, we want our money back. Like you used AI to create this. We could have done that. So why are we paying you $400,000 for it? So I think that's something to be aware of in consulting is you do have, like, even what we do, like when we do software selections, for example, that used to be like 80% of our revenue, but we're planning for that being 0% of our revenue in the near future because we have to assume people are going to use AI to make these decisions. You know, they're going to do the research. They're going to get the information they need. Maybe they come to us for some human validation or, you know, gap analysis, but those days of like big selection projects for us, we don't see that being around for much longer. But I also wonder, like, if the 3 stages you talked about, like we help AI to start, or AI helps us to start, then we help AI, and then AI takes over. So let's say AI takes over. This is getting super deep here. I'm way off topic a little bit here, but
I love it.
But it is interesting to think about, like, let's say none of us are working, or a lot of us aren't working because AI is doing our jobs for us. Then do we just get paid anyway? Does the government now need to pay for, you know, take care of us? Do the big tech companies make all the money, and now it's their responsibility to ensure society can live? Like, that's what I wonder is, like, okay, AI doing stuff for us isn't a bad thing until we don't have jobs and we can't feed ourselves. Like, that's the part I can't see. That's pretty fuzzy to me, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. That's completely out. That was completely not in our script of what to cover today, but since we're here.
It's a great question. And like, I guess the economics of it and the philosophy behind it is a really, really, really tricky thing. We're in a free market and in a capitalist society, and like that is what we know and what we work with. I can't imagine how things would need to change if suddenly, are we talking about universal basic income or like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't, but I think it's a lot of big questions that might be above my pay grade, but I'm all for it,
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
if I
mean,
can go outside and go on hikes every day, okay.
Yeah. As long as we can all survive, I suppose.
As long as we can all survive, man. As. long as the mortgage is paid,
Yeah. But then it's like, do the big tech companies and or governments have all the power? Like just way too much, way too much control and power over all of us. That's the
Yeah,
big
it's a
question.
good question. And well, who's paying them? Like at that point, if people don't work and don't have income and don't, like if universal basic income is the thing, or whatever it is, there's what are they paying for? What are you?
Yeah.
It kind of breaks my mind, actually. I'm trying to I'm trying to figure it out, and I don't know.
I'm having flashbacks to taking that intro to philosophy class in college, in university. That's how I feel. I feel like we're deep into philosophical meanings of life sorts of questions here, which is fun, but I don't know that we're going to answer that today. Although if the audience has answers, I'd love to hear actually the audience's take on this whole thread of AI and what it means to our jobs and our livelihood in the future. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are your predictions for 50 years from now? How will have AI impacted us, presumably our kids and grandkids, all that good stuff?
Yeah.
In fact, we already have one comment or response to that from Pastor on YouTube. Pastor says, if we could get that low code crowd to develop and sell or use tools, AI could create jobs too, I think. I like that. I think there's a lot of,
I like that.
It's like, I don't really know, and that's where I am too. I don't really know how this is going to unfold, but it's a good prediction there. So we were talking about job definitions before I took us down this completely random tangent involving the meaning of life and AI. We were talking about job roles and descriptions. We've talked about, the intangibles of hiring the right team. We've talked about, the balance of internal and external resources. Anything we're missing as far as, if I'm a CIO trying to build the right team for my IT staff and or my digital transformation project, anything else that you could think of as far as pitfalls or big mistakes that executives often make?
Yeah, I think there's a tricky one, and it's not hiring for the problem. Like a lot of times, especially if everything's fine and working perfectly, you're hiring for experience. You're looking at past titles and time in a specific seat instead of what the current need is. So you run into stagnation, right? Work that doesn't move, and you've got this weird gray period where people are waiting for momentum to show up. So I think this tiny little rule of thumb that experience is not output. So, look for great resumes, but remember, whatever the role is, you need a solution.
Right. Yeah.
Past wins don't ship future results.
Yeah. What do you have any examples of candidates that you thought were like, without naming names, but just examples of candidates that you thought were particularly strong, like just a really good, you kind of knocked it out of the park, and maybe one that was like, oops, I messed that up. That wasn't a good fit, that person I placed on this project. Do you have any like examples of like lessons from both extremes, like maybe extreme success and extreme failure?
Well, first of all, I've never made a bad placement. Totally kidding.
I know, but if you
wish that were the case, like, because you can't always see that. So, so in terms of like placing the wrong person in the right role, like there's certainly been experiences, and it's hard to zero in on one, because I also look at casting and look back at that as well. It's the double-edged sword of soft skills also, right? So you find this incredible person who has all of the experience, maybe they've worked for, for FANG, right? Like they've worked for Meta or, Google or you name it, and they've got all of this experience, and you assume when you drop them into a smaller organization, this person that's, the LeBron James of their lane is going to be perfect. But sometimes, and maybe more often than anybody would want to admit, that isn't the right fit. You're just hiring like for past titles instead of those current needs. Like that's the trouble. But I've also, even more than that, seen somebody who, hey, like we can see the impact that this person's going to create. We're in a call, we're in an interview, and they're workshopping with us right now. Like, oh, that's what you guys are working on. Well, have you tried this? Here's what I think you should do. Here's what I did in the past, and this is what that meant for us. Maybe you should try that. Maybe just work it out. Like when you find a little solution like that in an interview, and you've got somebody that's already thinking ahead to the results and thinking ahead to solution, like that is perfect. That's what you want. So they both happen, and they both happen more often than just a perfect fit. I think the extremes are the rule in hiring. But yeah, I think both happen. And I'm sorry I don't have specific examples, because if I did, those people would know who I'm talking about precisely.
Yeah, that's true. That's hard to completely mask the identity.
Just in case they're listening right now.
Yeah, they might be listening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. It did trigger another question, though, a follow-up, something you just said, and I lost it. It was not the best or worst hire. You were talking about, you were talking about the work situation where like you kind of observing how someone collaborates or how they interact, how they problem solve. When you're trying to find that right team member, trying to build out that team, is there a way that you can suss that stuff out, either during an interview or a mock situational analysis of like, how is this person going to solve problems? How are they going to collaborate or not with my team, the rest of my team, to solve a problem or whatever? How have you seen that? Like, how do you get to that before you bring a person onto the team?
It's actually easier than you'd think. And it's also something that a lot of companies are resistant to, and it's sharing problems. Like you have to be vulnerable and share the problems that you have, so somebody can come in and show their technical brilliance, that somebody could come in and start showing you their beautiful mind, and here's how things work, and here's how we could fix things, and here's how, you have to open up and show all the warts and all the problems so somebody can get excited about it. Like I think so often, and we talked about this earlier, companies want you to look at this, here's this perfect place on a hill that we all work at. And, that's what we all hope to work at. But there are just as many people who look at things and they go, here are the problems. That excites me and I want to fix it. We are at our core as people who want to create solutions, who want to get to the other side of it and achieve goals. Show problems, let people talk about them, and fix them. And if somebody's not offering a solution, that's telling you a lot.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Very cool. So if I'm a candidate or a leader that's trying to staff either my own internal team, or I want to bring in outside contractors to support a need or a project, tell us about how Lander Talent can help, and how you help in those cases. How can they get in touch with you? What are the first steps? Maybe help give us an action plan here. What are our next steps?
So landertalent.com, first and foremost, just make it your homepage. Just bookmark it. Let your browser open to that daily. But we've got a couple forms in there, one on the candidate side and one on the client side. Just let us know what you're looking for. You know, I'm happy to grab a coffee with anybody and talk through what their needs are. You know, one of my favorite things to do right now with Lander, and will probably always be the case, is you and I, Eric, on a cold call with somebody who's just like, hey, I need help, and just like, let's chat through it, let's spitball, let's, you know, figure out what it is you need, where we can add value. And I think that's the beauty of our partnership and our ability to work back and forth between Lander and Third Stage is, you know, we can bring a lot of different solutions. You know, hey,
Yeah.
you need some consulting. Hey, do you need a team? Do you need internal resources? Do you need contractors? Like, we can cover so much ground together, and that's something that I'm loving right now, and finding very rewarding in the work we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's been a good, you know, Lander Talent and Third Stage Consulting together are great because not only are we both agnostic, independent, we're focused on digital transformation, ERP, IT, all that stuff. But also, you know, we've got call it the more higher dollar traditional consulting services that Third Stage provides, which isn't mutually exclusive from what Lander does. In many cases, clients want some consulting, but they also want to build out their internal team, or they want to bring in outside contractors that they manage themselves. And it's also, you know, allows you to maybe not be as solely dependent on a large system integrator to get your resources. You know, a lot of times the big SIs will convince you that, hey, you need us to, you know, to manage your overall project, but you can also bring in your own contractors, your own people that, you know, you manage. Either, you know, you manage yourselves internally. Maybe they become permanent hires. Maybe they start as contract to hire, or hourly contractors. So this is a lot of different ways you can navigate this and find the different resources you need to support your project. So landertalent.com. Follow Jonathan on LinkedIn too, if you don't already. He's tagged it. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, he's already tagged in this post. But if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or one of the other platforms, be sure to check him out on LinkedIn, because you put out really good, helpful recruiting related content, both from the candidate perspective and from the leader perspective too. So whether you're a CIO trying to build a team, or whether you're a candidate trying to find your next role, be sure to follow Jonathan on LinkedIn as well. So really appreciate you being here today, Jonathan. This was a great conversation.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Always love being here, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. Love having you here, and appreciate the audience questions. And we do this same time, same place every Tuesday. So be sure to check us out wherever you're watching. We'll be here again, same time next week. This interview, this conversation is happening live. It'll become part of our weekly Transformation Ground Control podcast. So we'll edit this, polish it up, add some additional content, and create a formal episode of Transformation Ground Control. So keep an eye out for that. And in the meantime, thank you for being part of the live production of that podcast. So I hope you all have a great week. Thank you again, Jonathan. Thank you to the audience. Hope you all have a great week. Hope you're enjoying the holiday season, for those of you celebrating the holiday season right now. And we'll look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Have a great week in the meantime, everyone.